All right, guys, watch this. This is footage of the IRGC Joint Headquarters compound, and within hours of this strike, U.S. Central Command came out and said something I want you to really sit with. They said this is cutting off the head of the snake. Not degrading a target, not damaging a facility, cutting off the head of the snake. That's the language they used, and that phrase tells you everything about what this strike was actually designed to do, take out the brain of the entire Iranian military before it can even issue an order. Let's break this down. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. It's Ryan on the Max Afterburner channel, former F-15E combat fighter pilot, F-16 Thunderbird pilot. I've flown the Boeing 737, the Airbus A220, flown airliners for many years, and today we're talking about one of the most consequential parts of this entire war with Iran, the systematic dismantling of Iran's actual command and control structure, the brain that directs everything else. This isn't about tanks or planes or missile launchers sitting out in the open. This is about the headquarters buildings, the intelligence centers, the places where decisions actually get made. So stick around, I'll walk you through exactly what got hit, why targeting command and control matters so much more than people realize, and then at the end, I'll give you my take as a professional pilot on what this means. Let's get into it. So let's start with what actually happened here, because this was a massive, coordinated operation from the very first night. Operation Epic Fury kicked off in the pre-dawn hours with coordinated US and Israeli strikes hitting what officials described as high-value Iranian targets. And right at the top of that list were IRGC command and control facilities. This wasn't an afterthought or a secondary objective. Taking out Iran's command structure was one of the primary goals from the opening minutes of this entire campaign. Alongside those command centers, the strikes also went after naval assets and underground sites tied to Iran's nuclear program, air defense systems, missile and drone launch sites, and military airfields. But that command and control piece, that's the part I want to focus on today, because I think it's the least understood and honestly the most important part of the whole strategy. Within days, CENTCOM confirmed it had destroyed the actual headquarters of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps in a large-scale strike. And that's when they used that phrase, cutting off the head of the snake. Around that same time, Israeli forces reported conducting strikes on dozens of separate Iranian military command centers, including facilities belonging to the IRGC, Iranian Intelligence Headquarters, the IRGC Air Force Command Centers, and Internal Security Headquarters. According to Israeli statements, these strikes inflicted a severe blow to Iran's command and control capabilities and resulted in the elimination of personnel who were inside these critical facilities at the time. Then, just days later, the Israeli military struck the headquarters of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps Air Force specifically, describing that particular facility as the main command and control center responsible for directing all of Iran's air operations. So, in the span of about a week and a half, you had layer after layer of Iran's actual military brain getting systematically dismantled, the Joint Headquarters, the intelligence apparatus, the Air Force command structure, the Internal Security Command, one after another. Let me explain why this matters so much, because I think a lot of people watching combat footage naturally focus on the flashy stuff. The missiles, the fighter jets, the naval battles, and command and control strikes don't always look as dramatic on camera, but from a military strategy standpoint, they're arguably the single most important category of target in the entire war. Here's the thing about any modern military, even a large one with a lot of equipment and a lot of personnel, none of that matters if the people directing it can't communicate, can't coordinate, and can't issue orders. A tank without orders just sits there. A fighter jet without a functioning command structure telling it where to go and what to engage is useless. An air defense network without a centralized command center coordinating radar picture and target prioritization becomes a scattered collection of individual sites that can be picked off one at a time instead of working together as an integrated system. So when you take out the headquarters, the intelligence centers, the coordination hubs, you're not just destroying a building, you're potentially paralyzing entire branches of the military that are still sitting there, still armed, still theoretically dangerous, but suddenly unable to function as a coordinated force. This is actually a concept that goes back decades in military doctrine. It's often referred to as decapitation strategy. The idea that instead of grinding down an enemy's forces piece by piece in a long war of attrition, you go straight for the head, the leadership, the command structure, the decision-making apparatus, and you try to induce paralysis and collapse from the top down rather than the bottom up. It's a much faster, much more efficient way to defeat a numerically larger or more heavily armed opponent, assuming you have the precision intelligence and precision weapons needed to actually locate and hit those command nodes, which historically has been the hard part. You need to know exactly where the headquarters is, exactly when key leadership is present, and you need weapons precise enough to actually hit that specific building without leveling an entire city block around it. And what we've seen in this conflict is that the US and Israel clearly had exactly that kind of precision intelligence and precision weaponry, because they were hitting these very specific, very high-value facilities in rapid succession right from the opening days of the war. I also want to point out the personnel dimension of this, because I think it's honestly the part that matters most strategically, even more than the buildings themselves. Buildings can be rebuilt. Command centers can be relocated or reconstructed, given enough time and resources. But experienced senior military leadership, people who've spent decades rising through the ranks, who understand the operational plans, who have relationships and credibility with the forces under their command, that kind of institutional knowledge and leadership experience is a lot harder to replace quickly. And by most reports coming out of this conflict, dozens of senior Iranian military and intelligence leaders were killed in these opening strikes on command facilities. And that includes the killing of Iran's supreme leader himself in one of the early strikes, which triggered a leadership transition to his son. When you eliminate that much senior leadership that fast, you're not just disrupting operations for a few days while a headquarters building gets rebuilt. You're potentially setting back an entire branch's institutional competence and decision-making capacity for years, because whoever steps up to fill those roles doesn't have the same depth of experience, the same relationships, or the same operational knowledge that was just lost. Let's also talk about the scale of this campaign, because command and control strikes were just one thread running through an absolutely massive overall operation. Within the first 3 days alone, CENTCOM reported striking more than 1,700 targets across Iran, and by the 10-day mark, that number had grown to more than 5,000 targets struck, along with 50 Iranian naval vessels damaged or destroyed. That is an almost unbelievable operational tempo, thousands of precision strikes across just over a week, systematically working through Iran's command centers, air defenses, missile forces, and naval assets essentially simultaneously. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described the mission's focus as targeting the destruction of Iran's ballistic missile capabilities and its ability to manufacture them, along with neutralizing the threat Iran's Navy posed to global shipping. And command and control facilities sit right at the intersection of all of that, because none of those other capabilities, the missiles, the naval assets, the air defenses, can be effectively employed without a functioning command structure telling them what to do and when. I do want to be fair and mention something important here too, which is that not every claim from either side in a conflict like this gets independently verified in real time. And CENTCOM itself acknowledged at points that it provided no additional evidence beyond its own statements for some of these destruction claims. That's pretty normal for wartime reporting, especially early in a fast-moving campaign. Verification often takes time. Satellite imagery needs to be analyzed. Independent journalists and analysts need access that isn't always immediately available in an active war zone. So while the overall pattern here, sustained, heavy, deliberate targeting of Iran's command and control infrastructure, is very well documented across multiple sources and statements from both the US and Israeli militaries, I always think it's worth remembering that specific individual claims in the middle of an active war deserve a healthy amount of patience before treating them as absolutely 100% confirmed in every detail. I also want to touch on how Iran responded to all of this, because even with this much damage to their command structure, Iran clearly retained enough coordination capability to keep launching retaliatory strikes throughout this conflict. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has continued carrying out wave after wave of retaliatory strikes against Israeli and American targets in the region as part of what they've called Operation True Promise, using their own ballistic missiles and drone forces against targets in Israel and against U.S. bases across the Gulf. So I don't want to leave you with the impression that destroying command and control facilities completely ends an adversary's ability to fight back. Clearly, Iran has continued to operate and continued to strike back throughout this entire war. But what I think you can say with confidence is that a military forced to rebuild its command structure while simultaneously trying to fight a war on multiple fronts is going to be a lot less effective, a lot less coordinated, and a lot more prone to costly mistakes than one operating with its full, intact leadership and command apparatus in place. Okay, let me give you my take here as a professional pilot on why all of this matters strategically. Number one, I think this opening phase of the war shows incredibly sophisticated intelligence work happening well before the first bomb ever dropped. To hit that many specific, high-value command and control facilities in rapid succession, right from the opening hours of a war, means you had to already know exactly where every one of those targets was located. You had to have extremely current, extremely precise intelligence on Iran's entire command structure. That's not something you put together in the days immediately before a war starts. That represents months, more likely years, of patient intelligence gathering, aimed specifically at building a complete map of Iran's military brain before ever needing to actually strike it. Number two, I think the speed of this campaign, 1,700 targets in 72 hours, 5,000 within 10 days, tells you this entire operation was built around the principle of overwhelming, simultaneous pressure rather than a slow, gradual escalation. In a decapitation strategy like this, speed genuinely matters because the whole point is to inflict so much damage to the command structure so quickly that the enemy never gets the chance to adapt, relocate key leadership, disperse command functions, or reconstitute a coordinated response before the damage is already done. A slower, more gradual campaign gives an adversary time to see what's happening and start protecting or dispersing their remaining command assets. A fast, overwhelming one doesn't give them that chance. Number 3, and I think this is the biggest strategic takeaway, wars aren't just won by destroying equipment, they're won by breaking an opponent's ability to coordinate and direct that equipment effectively. Iran still has missiles, Iran still has drones, Iran still has naval assets. We've seen that clearly from their continued retaliatory strikes throughout this conflict. But a military that's had its joint headquarters destroyed, its intelligence apparatus hit, its Air Force command center leveled, and a significant chunk of its senior leadership killed, all within the opening days of a war, is fighting that war in a fundamentally degraded, disorganized state compared to where it started. That's the real damage here. Not just the buildings that came down, but the coordination and decision-making capacity that came down with them. All right, that's my breakdown of the strikes on Iran's command and control infrastructure and why they matter so much. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Do you think decapitation strategies like this are the future of how modern wars get fought and won? Or do you think there are limits to how effective this approach can really be against a determined, resilient adversary? I want to hear your thoughts. If you found this breakdown valuable, go ahead and hit that like button for me. It genuinely helps get this kind of content out to more people. And subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, because I'm covering every part of this conflict as it develops. Go ahead and follow me on X. Follow me on Instagram. I'm posting pretty much every day. Links in the description. And join the Max Ready Room if you want priority replies during the live streams. I'm doing those pretty much daily right now. And then check out this video right here. I think you're going to enjoy it. This is Ryan, also known as Max Afterburner, also known as the fighter pilot next door, signing off.